Jordan with Unique Wealth Education, and I am very excited to have an incredible guest on our show today who is, managing over $500 million of apartments and over 5,400 units. And he's an incredible, knowledgeable gentleman, and he's here to share with us some of the lessons he's learned, as well as tell us a little bit about himself. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Looking forward to our conversation.
So Joe, I want to ask you, how did you get started? I mean, you built this, this empire, which I call it. This is just, $500 million under management, 5,400 plus units. And it's growing. Pretty soon, probably next time I have you on, we're going to be talking about you're at $1 billion. So how did you get started?
I went from Texas to New York City after I graduated college, and I was working in advertising. My salary was $30,000. So every 2 weeks I got a check for about $750. Well, my rent was about $750. So I had $750 remaining to live off of, to pay for a subway card, a metro card to and from work, to pay for student loans. I had $20,000 in student loan debt at the time. And so point is, I didn't have a lot of discretionary income. So I wasn't focused at all on investing. I was just focused on making it the next month and then progressing through my career. And as I progressed through my career, I went from making $30,000 to $150,000 in a relatively short period of time for that industry. And I became the youngest vice president of a New York City advertising agency. And as I progressed along the way, I kept my living expenses relatively low for New York City standards especially, but really for any city standards. Therefore, I was able to save a lot of money along the way, or relatively speaking, a lot of money along the way. And I then eventually came up with $20,000 and saved up. And I had read the book Investing for Dummies. They talk about 3 different ways to invest: stocks, bonds 1, investing in startups 2, and investing in real estate 3. I naturally gravitated towards real estate. My family has I have some real estate agents and brokers in my family. My dad was one in Michigan, but then Flint, Michigan, the economy tanked. And so we actually moved from Flint, Michigan in the early 1980s to Texas. And he wasn't a real estate agent anymore, but so he has some experience. And my sister is a real estate agent in Dallas, Fort Worth currently. So I just felt more comfortable with that and gravitated towards real estate.
Excellent. What was the first deal you've ever done? So you got to the point where you're at right now, which is, which doesn't happen overnight. It's an incredibly tall task that most people don't ever get to, and I never want listeners to think that we could all achieve whatever incredible successful people like you achieve. But we want to dream big, and success is defined differently for everyone. So I'd like to know, how did you get started in your first deal?
First deal was a house that I purchased for $76,000 in Duncanville, Texas. I still own it today. The down payment was 20%, so around $15,000 plus closing costs and miscellaneous things. All in, I was in around $20,000. Bought it for, as I mentioned, $76,000. It rented for $1,095 at the time, and now it rents for about $1,300. This is October of 2009. October 2009. I actually was ready to purchase a home in January of 2009, and it took me 10 months to actually complete my first transaction. And during those 10 months, I made offers on properties. I actually lost earnest money on one house of about $1,500. It was just such a rookie mistake, clearly, and I actually don't even remember the exact technical reason why I lost it. I mean, I guess the technical reason is we weren't paying attention to the contract, or I wasn't paying attention to the contract and the expiration date for when my earnest money went hard. But that was, it still is a lot of money, but holy cow, when you got $20,000 in your savings account and you just lost 1,500 or so of that.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
that's a huge hit. So that knocked me back some, but I learned, and I eventually found the first house, and still have today. It's worth probably around $180,000, and I'm currently evaluating what makes the most sense because I have three homes. Everything else is multifamily, but I do have the three homes I originally purchased, and I'm trying to determine what makes the most sense, either refinancing or selling. One of those two things. I'm trying to figure that out.
So you got started in single family, and that was in what year?
That was in 2009.
So 10 years later, we're at over $500 million, over 4,400 units, 5,400 units. Amazing in 10 years. And so, as far as you switched over, because we're having a conversation before we got started, you switched over from single family because you felt you could scale a lot quicker into multifamily, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I was yeah on that house making 1,000, or it was bringing in $1,095. Let's just call it $1,100. Bringing in $1,100, and the mortgage and property management fees and everything. I'm netting about $200 to $300 until someone moves out or until we have to evict someone, and then all those profits get wiped away because we have to spend $5,000 on some repairs. And I realize it's just not a set up for scale the way I was buying it. I mean, waiting to save up 20K, which took many years to do, and then buy it, and then I make $250 a month will not allow me to be financially free in the near term for sure. Sure, I'm building equity, but I realize I've just got to scale this puppy, and that's whenever I started really being focused on the multifamily front.
So I find most newer investors, I mean, we all look at single family homes to start off with, and not that it's a bad play, it's not at all. I mean, I think that if you're in certain markets where the returns are higher, single family definitely works. If you're in Texas or California, no. I mean, single family, just the returns don't work. So I could understand why, you looked at it and said, hey, listen, I got bigger dreams, bigger aspirations. But for someone that has money sitting in their bank account and, wants to build a portfolio up, maybe single family homes in a certain market does work. So I understand your reasoning, and, because they look at it, what options do we have? And most people look at single family as the easiest way to get into real estate investing. So what options do you offer to investors to get involved with you and to start investing with you?
We work with high net worth accredited investors who want to passively invest in our apartment communities. And I have actually a resources page that is really beneficial to passive investors looking to learn more about the process, as well as look at questions that perhaps they should ask a sponsor, someone like me, prior to investing with them. And it's besteverpassiveinvestor.com. If you go to besteverpassiveinvestor.com, there's no other site like it that I'm aware of that is strictly focused on the passive investor. And then, there's options there. Should you want to potentially invest with us, you can go to investwithjoe.com, and there's you can fill out a form, and then my team and I will be in touch with you.
So what do you say to the individual who is not an accredited investor and wants to get started investing in real estate? Do you tell them go to a market where maybe you could invest in single family homes, get started there, build some equity, maybe make some money, and then eventually down the line maybe you're an accredited investor because of your net worth or growing in your position with your your career? What would you suggest for them?
I think regardless of their current financial status, the important thing to identify is, what do you want to do? Because if they want to be more active or more passive, regardless of current financial situation, you can be more active or passive. It's possible. Like there's crowdfunding platforms out there where you can invest $500, $100, maybe not 100, I don't know, but $500 as a non-accredited investor. So pretty much anyone can invest. And
Sure.
If you have a hard time saving $500, then there's got to be another podcast for you that's focused on self-discipline and other things like that. So I'd say first identify what you want to do, and then regardless of your financial situation, and then if you are not accredited but you want to be a passive investor, then there's crowdfunding platforms. Or what I would do is I'd look at the crowdfunding platforms, but I'd also meet with real estate investors in my local market and learn about what they're doing, and then find a way to partner up with them. I host a meetup in Cincinnati the last Tuesday of every month, and we get in these small circles after we meet as a larger group. There's about 70 people there, so we meet up in, like, after we do the larger group, we do say 10 groups of 7 or something. And I was in my group, and one of the guys in my group, he was looking to raise $10,000. I mean, and I laugh at that because it's not a significant amount relative to what most people raise. He was looking to do it for a single family house, and so a non-accredited investor could participate in something like that. Whether or not they could bite off the whole 10K, depends on their situation, but that could be a good way to get going. And then what you're doing is, in addition to passively getting into a deal, although technically if it's a joint venture, you need to have some active role, but you can configure that how you need to. In addition to that, you're also building a relationship with someone else who is in a similar spot but wants to be more active. Therefore, you have a potential business partner that you can work with in the future.
I like that because I have investors coming into office daily. We just had 2 today earlier, and our sales manager, who's our property specialist, took them out, and they were talking about how do we get started in real estate and whatnot, and because they're newbies. And I told them you just got to surround yourself with the right people, be part of an organization, find yourself someone who you can do deals with, maybe even someone who's a professional in the business, a mentor who could help do your first couple deals. So they came out to us and they said, hey, can you help us out? We said absolutely. So we do work with people like that, and I think that one of the important parts is learning, the pitfalls that can happen in real estate, whether it be in single family, multifamily. You got to learn the ins and outs. So I really agree with you on that. Being part of a group who is like-minded and has the same goals to build wealth and passive income. So that's huge. We were talking earlier, and I said, what is the, no point intended here, but the best ever advice that you can offer to listeners on why, your situation with, owning all these apartment complexes and, having so much under management, to get started in real estate. What makes you unique, and what is the most unique thing about what you've done, as far as what have you learned the most by being in the business for so long?
Well, I'd say so I've got a daily podcast, and it is a daily interview-based podcast. Now, not every single episode is an interview. Sometimes I talk shop with Theo Hicks, who is on my team, and he co-authored actually 3 books with me. But by and large, I've been doing it for 1,700 or so days in a row. 7 days a week, 1,700 days in a row. So
you pick up a lot from that.
I pick up, I'd have to. Anyone would. And I believe I have interviewed the most real estate investors, more real estate investors than anyone else on the face of this earth. I don't think anyone in the world has interviewed more real estate investors than I have. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't know of anyone who's crazy enough to have interviewed 1,600, 1,700 or so real estate investors. So that is what I've used to get my business farther faster in an intelligent and conservative way. I've learned, I've scraped my knee, fallen down, scraped my knee, and lost money on a deal. But I know from the conversations things to reconfigure and to optimize, and then we don't make those same mistakes again, or at least haven't yet. So
what's the biggest lesson you've learned? I mean, interviewing 1,700 people. I mean, that's amazing. 1,700 straight. I mean, that's just outrageous. I mean, to me, that's more interviews outrageous than anyone has done. So I look at it like through all those interviews. I guess this is the way to put it. What's the best ever piece of advice or lesson learned from all those interviews?
I think it's. So I'll preface. Let me preface it first by saying, one piece of advice. This isn't my best, but one piece of advice is take all the free advice you can get and then decide what you want to do with it. And the reason why you do that is because people give advice based on their personal experiences and how it's been applicable to them, for the most part. So my best advice might not be as applicable to everyone because I'm coming about it from my unique perspective, because we all have a unique perspective. But I think it will be applicable to a lot of people. And so here it is, and that is, when I was interviewing Robert Kiyosaki on my podcast, he said the richest people in the world build networks and everyone else looks for work. And that's why you're doing a podcast. That's why I'm doing a podcast. I'm building a network. And I know, that when we build a network of people who are adding value to, that is worth its weight I guess it doesn't weigh anything. If everyone sat on a scale, then that's worth its weight in gold.
It means a lot.
It means a lot. It really does. And I've seen how that has translated into business results for my apartment syndication business. And if I were to be more transactional focused, then I'd really be looking for a job, which could be a metaphor for my next deal. And then I'd have to start all over again with, building the relationships and other things. So I know as long as I continue to add value to a large group of people and I'm building a network, then I will be truly rich, not only financially, but also emotionally, because it's a wonderful feeling to, learn from people and then just simply talk in a microphone and then record it and share it, because other people can benefit too.
Absolutely, because I believe the same thing. Wealth and success is not only financial, but it's also an emotional gratification that you get by helping people and grow other people. And knowing that what you've taught that person has helped them, in their life, in their financial life, and even in their personal life. So that's a huge thing. And I know you're that kind of guy. You're the guy that wants to give back, and that's why you're where you're at. Not only because of the incredible knowledge that you have and the deals that you locate in the structure, but you're also the kind of person that people want to deal with. That's going to work with them, make them money, and build that long-term relationship. So that's incredible. Last piece that you want to that I have here is, and hopefully we'll have you back on in the future, Joe. I'd love to have you back on the next 6 months or in the year, because you always have great advice, and maybe we could talk about one particular topic, and a lot of the listeners could get a lot from it. But I know you mentioned that any of the listeners that want to go out there and get some great information, besteverpassiveinvestors.com. and also investwithjoe.com. And you can reach out to them. You guys can reach out to Joe's group there. And, you could probably, listen to his podcast, get a lot of free information, and potentially invest with Joe through some of his syndication deals if you're an accredited investor. And, he also has a great book, which I recommend, which is the Best Ever Apartment Syndication Book. And that's another good one to read, because obviously Joe in the last 10 years has done incredible things, and there's a lot of knowledge that can be picked up from him. So, Joe, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. It's been a good conversation. Hopefully, we'll have some more conversations in the future, and we'll have some deep dives into particular topics. But you've been wonderful, and I really appreciate you being on.
I enjoyed it as well. Great catching up with you.
Thank you, Joe.